I'm Kimberly Montalvo. I'm 16. I go to JP Taravella and I give permission to AfriKin to use and record this video. I had and have a lot of friends who go to Douglas. So when I heard the news and when I was reaching out to my friends, it was very rough because a lot of them weren't answering until like the end of the day or the next day. So I was just wondering like what could have happened to them, like if anything happened to them. And it was hard because I've lived here my whole life. I grew up with these people. I remember hearing the victims' names, and one of them was the name of my friend. They didn't have the same last name, but so it wasn't her. But when I was texting her, she wasn't answering all day, so I was just thinking like, what if it was her? Like, what if that was my friend? And it was like just a really hard day. And the weeks that followed, it's just been rough. So my school, we've donated to Douglas. We've raised $3,000 so that we could help with their school and their moving forward, and they're ensuring a better system of safety for their school. But our school having just more security in the days that followed, it helped put some people at ease. Just know that there was more protection from the incident because it was right next to us. It was just 15 minutes away from us, so it was scary. It was like everyone's thinking it could have been us too. So having just that extra security helped for the days and the weeks that passed by. Nicholas Cruz is a domestic terrorist. That's what he is, no matter what mental ailments he may have. He is simply put a domestic terrorist, and the news not categorizing him as such is a direct result of white privilege. Because provided Nicholas Cruz was black, he would be labeled a thug. He would have been killed on the spot. If he was Middle Eastern, he would have been directed as a terrorist immediately, no questions about it. Whether he would have been categorized as Muslim even if he wasn't Muslim. If he was brown, if he was Latino, he would have been called a gangster and killed on the spot. All these other minorities, had he been one of those, he would have been killed on the spot. But because he's white, he's not categorized as a domestic terrorist. He is instead a troubled child at 19 years old. He had mental issues. They're trying to look into his past and say, this happened because his mom died, his dad died, he was adopted, XYZ, he was bullied. But black kids aren't afforded this same privilege when it comes to investigating crimes. So the way the media is categorizing Nicholas Cruz is completely unfair. They need to call him what he is. They were told months and years in advance. There was all these warnings, all these police presences at his house, and they didn't do anything, or they just completely swept it under the rug. And then with the laws that are in place that allow you to acquire such high, like military grade weapons, like it comes to the fault of law enforcement and then the laws that aren't even being enforced, or are being weakly enforced, or are weak to begin with. So I feel having teachers with guns or increased police presence in school isn't really going to help solve the issue or add any kind of layer of security or safety to the students, because it's adding more fuel to the fire, really. Like, you're having all these extra guns on campus and it's not going to make anyone feel any safer. It really is just adding to the issue. Just having more guns, like whether it's carried by a police or carried by a teacher, no matter how much training they have, it's not gonna help the students feel safer. People kill people with guns. And you have like all these mass shootings, like look at Douglas, he wouldn't have killed that many people with a knife. So the gun, really, what he had, the AR-15, like that killed people. There shouldn't be a need to arm yourself in defense of guns, because a good guy with a gun doesn't stop a bad guy with a gun. It's just, now there's two people with a gun and there's more people getting injured. So having teens arm themselves, or having like anyone really arm themselves, is not going to stop the issue, because the issue, like at its core, is just the lax gun control in America. I am personally worried about police brutality, because it's just not something you can avoid, especially as a minority, especially as a black person. It's unavoidable, really. So, like for myself, I know that when they pull you over they'll be like, oh, because you're speeding, or they thought you were like suspicious. So really, it's just in my best interest to practice more caution, like take more caution on the road or anything, just doing anything at all, because it's tough and it's been tough and it needs to get easier, but I don't know when it's going to actually change for us. The voice of Black teens really isn't being heard. When it comes to talking about police presence at schools, you know, these Black kids who saw their friends die in front of them too, and now they have to deal with the trauma from that, and then the dangers that they might face with all the police presence on school when they have an increased risk of police brutality, and these concerns are not being heard by the widespread media. So I feel that the Black students, particularly at MSD, like their concerns are not being heard as much as they should be. In America, it seems like nothing is really a danger until it endangers white people. So had this happened at, like in Lauderhill, had it happened at Ely or at Piper, it wouldn't have been heard as much. It wouldn't have been seen as a concern because Black kids are supposed to get used to this, like get used to the trauma associated with guns and get used to being in a dangerous neighborhood. So because it took place in somewhere that's supposed to be safe, with Parkland being voted the safest city in Florida, because it took place in a safe, predominantly white neighborhood, it's getting talked about more because now they're seen as the victims and this threatens their community. But in all the years when it's been threatening Black communities, like in Manhattan, like in Chicago, it hasn't gotten such nationwide support. So definitely having it happen in Parkland is the main reason that this debate is happening. I am interested in having like my voice heard because I feel that the perspective that comes from Black people needs to be heard as well. Because this movement, though it's an important movement and I'm glad it's happening, it shouldn't have taken so long, and the Black people who have been saying this for years shouldn't have been ignored, because I feel having it just wait and wait and wait until it became to a point where now white people are the victims and now it's getting heard. I feel that having more Black presence in it should also be a concern of the movement and the movement organizers, because voices of all perspectives need to be heard. So I feel that the future for people of color looks very promising because our generation is the future, and our generation has done so much with regards to movements and being culturally aware and being more accepting of ourselves. The future definitely looks very bright, brighter than it has in the past. And we're going to see some major changes in the years to come that are positive changes for people of color and Black people. And I'm proud to be a part of it. Support our movements, support our change, support what we're doing in order to create this change, because nothing can be done alone. And it's just good to have parental support and support in all directions from anywhere, really. Have our voices heard, like be there for us when we need you to be there for us. Help us organize, help us get our voices out, because we can't just be talking into empty space. Like we can't just be talking to people with our same perspectives. We need to get our voice out to all people from everywhere so that we can really ensure that our message is being heard and accepted. We definitely need to work on the conditions that kids of color are raised in and how they're perceived, because our movements, they need to succeed in order to see a change for us. But if we stay in the same conditions that we're at, there's not really a lot that we can do just from our small standpoint, because with what happened with Parkland, they were able to do so much because of their position of privilege and where they're at. So with Black kids, with kids of color, we need to find a way or make a way for us to rise up and have a better place to start from. I feel like nobody listens to the kids from Lauderhill, the kids who are in more disadvantaged neighborhoods, because they're supposed to be used to all of this. They're supposed to be used to the shootings or used to poor conditions. And with Parkland, with them being from such a privileged neighborhood, with them being in that position and then having such a tragedy hit, it seems to come from, well, they're not used to this, this is horrible for them, this is such a tragedy, and it is. But when you see the same thing happening in Chicago school, there's just the status quo. So I feel like their position where they're at, it helped them advance their movement more because it's seen as something like it's shocking versus other like inner city places where it's just accepted. It's not something that we can just say we need to stop this in Parkland or it stops in Parkland. We need to look at all the schools everywhere in America and see that this has been happening for years in Chicago, in Manhattan, and it's been an issue. And because it's been happening there, it's the norm, but it's not normal. It shouldn't be normal for little black kids to go to school and then be worried about getting shot just because of where they live. This is an issue of both gun control and gun regulations and the lack of both, and how having whiteness in the conversation allows them more space to be accepted in the conversation. And having a black voice really means that more often than not you will get shut out, but it needs to be heard because these conversations need to be had by everyone for everyone, because this isn't just a white issue. This is an issue for everyone in America, and everyone in America is Latino, black, Asian, everything. So we need to really look at every single person's standpoint because this is something that affects everybody. I am Kim. I am AfriKin. Come and join us May 19th in Miami to advance the ingenuity and promise of our people.